There we go. And there's a number of people that have asked for the recording. We'll put it on our YouTube channel within the next few days. We'll put it on social media as well, in case there's anything here you want to look back on and catch up on or share with other people. So fantastic to see so many people here. Hot topic, clearly in demand. Really appreciate Carrie Abner being here, VP of Credential and Standards, and also Khyla Freeman, Assessor Manager for ICF, International Coach Federation. Two things to start with. It's a presentation and then questions. And we've also had some feedback of what people are wanting to leave the session with. So that's been shared with Carrie and Khyla from the get-go. So they've got that in mind as well. We've got two more community cafes coming up. We got 22nd of September, relational challenges in coaching, and also Dr. Akina Finch, who's talking about DEIB in November. What's next in DEIB? So keep a lookout on the homepage of the website. All our community cafes are complimentary. And I'm talking fast because I know there's so much to get through in this session. Without further ado, Carrie, Khyla, so good to have you. And over to you.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's really nice to be here and nice to see so many familiar faces and also some new faces. So thank you so much for the invitation. I'll pull up my slides and I'll turn it over to Khyla to kick us off.
Yeah. Well, I'll echo as they're coming up. Thank you all for joining. We know that this is probably a much anticipated session, so we're glad that we have the opportunity to hopefully provide some more clarification on how to best utilize the mentor coaching forums. So to get into our agenda for today, we will start with what the purpose of the forums are. Just getting into a little bit more information about why they were developed and how they're going to be used. We'll shift into how to use those mentor coaching forms. I will take that time to go over a live session observation form and competency review form at the ACC level, just to do a complete walkthrough so that you're able to understand the ins and outs of the form. We'll get into how this rolls into 2027, how this plays into the transition, and then we'll finish off with providing you with resources that can aid your mentor coaching practice in addition to the use of the forms.
Well, we know that, as Khyla mentioned, this is a hot topic. We know there are a lot of questions about how to use these forms, why they exist in the first place. And we know that many of you may be coming to this session feeling a little bit like this gentleman here, a little overwhelmed by the forms, not sure where to get started with them. But we're hoping by the end of our session today, you'll feel a little bit more like this, a little clear, not only on the purpose of the forms, how to use them, and the benefits that they can offer your mentor coaching clients, but a little more familiar with the form makeup, the design, what's important to complete, and what's a little bit where there's some room for flexibility, creativity, etc., and with a lot more confidence as you move forward to best support your clients. I'm going to kick us off talking about the purpose of the forms, kind of why did we design these in the first place, and how they were designed, and the difference between the session observation form and the competency review form, what the purposes of those forms are really. I'd like to start by going back in time a little bit. You know, mentor coaching has been a really important part of ICF credentialing for many, many years. And we've had a pretty consistent and clear definition of mentor coaching through those years. Here you'll see two definitions of mentor coaching. The first was the original definition that we had in place for many years through 2024. The second definition on the screen is one that we developed as part of our mentor coaching job analysis process. And that was a process that included hundreds of mentor coaches around the world to help us identify the key tasks, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities that mentor coaches need to have or be able to do in order to provide quality services. So we made some refinements, some small refinements to the definition during that job analysis process. Some of you on this call were part of that job analysis, so thank you so much for contributing to this work. But essentially, the concepts included in both of these definitions have really remained the same. That being that mentor coaching is designed to be a collaborative dialogue between a mentor coach and a client, providing feedback on the client's use of coaching skills in alignment with the ICF core competencies based on an observed coaching session or coaching sessions. And that's really important here. Now, those observed coaching sessions can be recorded sessions, they can be live sessions, and that doesn't change with these definitions. But it is important. That's been a critical part of the mentor coaching definition for many years. But what we found is that despite this definition, the practice itself in reality was all over the map. There wasn't consistency in the mentor coaching process. And because of that, there was a lot of confusion around it, both for mentor coaches, but also for clients on what to expect as part of that mentor coaching process, what clients were investing their funds and time in doing, and what to expect as the outcome of that. But also a lot of confusion among mentor coaches as well in terms of what does a quality mentor coaching session look like. As part of our research over the last couple of years, we actually undertook a survey with mentor coaches, with mentor coach practitioners. And 68% of them said that clients struggle to understand what high quality mentor coaching should look like and feel like. Another 60% reported client confusion about the mentor coach's role and responsibilities. 55% cited that clients have difficulty evaluating mentor coach qualifications. So how to find someone who is trained and well equipped to provide quality mentor coaching services. And to help address these challenges, nearly 60% of the respondents in that survey indicated that mentor coaches should complete standardized training that aligns with the mentor coaching competencies. And 57% indicated that mentor coaches should also complete regular required continuing education to maintain their mentor coach status and their competency over time. So the reality that has been mentor coaching practice is a little bit like the image on this slide, with arrows going in every which direction. There's one discipline, but every practitioner was practicing in a slightly different way, and so there was lack of consistency. That really informed how we went about this process to develop the mentor coach specialization and the resources to support mentor coaches through this process, being included among those the mentor coaching forms that we're going to talk about today. The inconsistency in practice and quality of mentor coaching presented a real challenge, not only to practitioners, not only to clients, but it also presented a real challenge to us as the ICF organization as well. We know from subject matter experts that mentor coaching is really important. It's imperative to a coach's development. We know that it can be transformational. We know that really good coaching evolves through really good mentor coaching. Yet, if we as an organization were requiring it for initial credentialing and certainly ACC renewals as well, we wanted to make sure that we were requiring some standards or providing some standards to help ensure quality, consistency, and transparency for everybody involved in mentor coaching practice. And so that's what we're doing through the mentor coaching specialization as well as the forms. It's to ensure a level of consistency in the feedback, the evaluation of coaching skills and the feedback that mentor coaching clients receive, in the quality of that, to make sure that it aligns with ICF standards for coaching practice at different credential levels, and transparency for clients to understand who is qualified and equipped and well-trained to provide mentor coaching services, but also increasing transparency throughout the system, the coaching system. Ultimately, we hope some of these kind of moves, these changes will really advance coaching practice writ large and help elevate coaching skills. Let's talk a little bit about the form, what the purpose of those forms are, as well as some of the distinctions between the two forms that we'll talk about today. The session observation and the competency review forms are uniquely designed for individual one-to-one mentor coaching sessions. These are not needed, they're not required, they're not designed for group mentor coaching. So if you provide group mentor coaching, you don't need to use these forms for that type of context. These are only designed for individual one-to-one mentor coaching sessions. And they're designed to provide some standardized, comprehensive evaluation that's objective and evidence-based so that we work as hard as possible to remove kind of biases out of the process of evaluating coaching skills by using very specific, clear behavioral definitions for independent skills, unique skills, at specific credential levels, and a consistent rating scale that can help provide consistency across mentor coaches, supported, of course, through training. And again, this is based on an observed coaching session, or in the case of the cumulative or the competency review forms, over several individual coaching sessions that are observed by the mentor coach. So not through talking about one's coaching, but rather through observing, reviewing, and evaluating through objective kind of criteria and rating scales, the quality of that coaching. Now, there are some distinctions between these forms, and Khyla's going to go over the individual forms in greater detail in just a few minutes. But I did want to kind of just introduce some of the different uses and why we have these two forms to begin with. Now, the session observation form, again, that's for a single observed coaching session. So that's when you're working in a one-to-one mentor coaching engagement with a client, and you are observing one of their coaching sessions, again, either live or a recorded session. And you're evaluating that coach's skills based on criteria at a specific credential level, ACC, PCC, MCC. This form provides kind of specific behaviors in which the client will be evaluated, as well as kind of a rating scale that provides objective kind of parameters for each rating, allowing you to provide that feedback on the individual coaching skills to that client, whether they demonstrated that skill proficiently or at a different level of proficiency. It also allows for feedback on the client's strengths as well as their areas for development. Now, we're going to get into this in a little bit more detail in a moment. It provides options and space for you as a mentor coach to provide that feedback in a written format, but we also accept a large kind of a variety of different feedback options. So this is where you can be more creative and meet your client where they are and based on the needs that they have specifically for their own learning purposes. Again, Khyla will kind of talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes. It also includes prompts for the client to reflect on their own coaching skills, both before the mentor coaching session, that debrief session with you, but also after. Once that debrief session has taken place, what did they learn about themselves, their coaching, and where they want to go in the future? So it includes some of those prompts for the client's own self-reflection as well. Primarily, this session observation form is for the client's development. It's going to be for their use. In very few instances will a session observation form ever be requested to be sent to the ICF. Only in cases where a candidate's application is selected for audit will an individual be requested to submit the session observation forms that their mentor coach has completed for them. So this is primarily designed for the coach's development and growth and their learning. By contrast, the competency review form is designed to show kind of a cumulative review of that coach's skills that they've demonstrated over the course of an individual mentor coaching engagement. So across sessions, whether that's 3 observed sessions that you've completed for them, or maybe it's 17 sessions that you've observed and evaluated them on. This is going to provide that cumulative review of all of the skills in which they demonstrated proficiency. It also includes prompts for client self-reflection, as well as space, again, for you to provide feedback on their strengths and areas for development, again, with flexibility for delivery. So it doesn't always have to be written feedback that you provide in the space provided. It can be other mechanisms or modalities to deliver that feedback to the client based on their needs. But it does provide that space. If your client prefers written feedback, and if you prefer providing written feedback, it does provide that space for that. So I'm going to hand it over to Khyla to take us to walk us through the forms a little bit more in depth. And I'll turn it over to you, Khyla.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. So I saw a couple of questions coming in about on the chat. So I actually will be covering the review of the live forms. But before I get to that, I did want to talk about some general points regarding the use of the forms. So the first is just for additional clarification who the forms are for. So the competency review form and the session observation forms are for all applicants, but specifically ACC and PCC applicants will be using this to submit for their credentials. So this is also will be embedded within level 1 and level 2 programs who have that mentor coaching as well. So if if a client is taking a level 1 or level 2 program, they will be using both of these forms. But also for those who are working with independent mentor coaches and applying through the portfolio path, this will be used for the submission in place of the performance evaluation. The forms are not required for renewal, so that we always want to make sure that that's clear. However, it can be used for renewal as well. So it is an option. For example, if somebody wants to apply for their PCC in the future, but they're renewing for their ACC, then PCC mentor coaching and the use of these forms could be used for that application in the future. So that's something that could be arranged. And then also, it will not be used for MCC applications. So the performance evaluation is still in place, so they won't have to use these forms when they're submitting. So that hasn't changed. Lastly, while we do say that the MCC doesn't require these forms, we do highly encourage the use of them because, once again, this still provides that standardized way of receiving mentor coaching. And this can actually further help them with the success with the rest of their credentialing process. And then to go over the form requirements. So we've gotten a lot of questions on how the form requirements fit into the hourly coaching requirement. So as a refresher, 10 hours of mentor coaching are required for those applying for a credential. A minimum of 3 hours have to be 1-to-1 with a mentor coach, and the remaining 7 hours can be group or 1-to-1 mentor coaching. So embedded in this requirement would be the use of these forms. So a minimum of 3 session observation forms are required to be used within the 1-to-1 mentor coaching experience, where a coach or a mentor coach would review an observed or recorded session and then go over this with the client using that session observation form. At the end of those 3 session observation forms, then the mentor coach would complete a competency review form. Within that competency review form, it does have to validate that they meet 67% of the skills outlined under each ICF core competency. So once I go over the forms live, that'll make a little bit more sense to see it as well. And then lastly, Carrie mentioned this, but the competency review forms are the only thing that's going to be required for that initial application submission. However, if the applicant is pulled for audit, then those accompanying session observation forms will need to be presented within that application. And lastly, one of the big perks of having this form built into Word and just developed as a whole is so that it can be translated. So the form can be translated into in any language that you and your client are fluent in. The main requirement that we ask is that you don't change anything to the format of the form itself. So we just need to be able to translate it back to English so that we can review it when somebody submits it for their application. Um, you don't have to worry about submitting it in English or translating it back into English once you translate it into your native language. So we ask that you continue to keep it in native language if that's what's comfortable for you. And then just making sure that no additional wording or comments are added because that can create some confusion and some delay in the reviewing process as well. So it just has to be a direct translation. And as we know, with some languages, it may not always be super direct, but as long as we once again can translate that back into English and understand how it was marked, then translation is allowed. So I'm gonna go ahead and move into a live demo of the session observation form. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So I did want to start off by showing you where to locate. Oh wait, hold on. Okay, there we go. It's loading. Where to locate the forms. So within our website, you can go to resources. At the bottom, you'll see resource library. And then you can scroll down, and within this section, you can look up any competency review form for any credential level and any session observation form for any credential level. This is the easiest way to find the forms, but also upon receiving your MCS, in that email that you receive, there's also direct links to access the form. So if you're ever wondering where to find them after, or you may not, have saved the email once you were awarded your MCS, this is the easiest way to locate a lot of our resources, but specifically those two forms. So for the sake of today, I will be demonstrating how to use the form using the ACC session observation and competency review form, but I'll explain the nuances of the different forms and how they might look a little bit different at each credential level. Can everybody see this okay? Do I need to zoom in a little bit more? Okay, perfect. All right, so there starts off with just an overview, just instructions on how the form should be used, the requirement that's coming up and how it plays a role in that. The specialized mentor coach expectations, which you'll be asked to attest to later on, and then some of the documentation requirements. We know this is a lot of reading, so it's really important to just make sure you read through it at least once to understand what is required of you with those forms, and it outlines that in a little bit more detail. So first I have highlighted a few sections within this form, so just know that the highlights are for my purposes and they aren't built into the actual forms. But within this administrative information section, I want to draw close attention to this. Some people might think this is a little bit redundant in how we present our forms, but one of the big things is that we want to make sure that the mentor coach is providing mentor coaching services to the right credential level. So you will be asked to provide which credential level you're providing those services, and we will be making sure that it correlates with the form that the person is using. So that'll be important to make sure that you mark correctly.
Hey, Khyla. Khyla, I apologize for interrupting. We've had some requests. If you can zoom in a little bit further, it's a little hard to see. So if you don't mind to zoom into the form a little bit more so to make it easier to read. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I wanted to make sure. No worries. Is this good for the people I've asked? Okay, perfect. I see head nods. So then moving into the client reflection. And so this is a little bit more of an informal part of the session observation form. So the pre-review reflection can be done prior to the session that you have with your client, and also can be embedded within the session that you have with the client. We've had a couple questions come up about when it can be done, how it could be done. And we really wanted to provide general guidance, but we know that it depends on how you interact with your client, how you would like to go through that reflection, and that it may differ between who you're working with. So we wanted to allow a little bit of flexibility for this. You will not have to document this within the form, but you will have to attest that you did it at the end of this form. So that's an important note here. Same thing for the post-review reflection. It can be done at the end of the session, or it can be done through email after the session. So there is some flexibility there to do it with embedded in the session or outside of this actual one-to-one mentor coaching session. And then moving into the self-review checklist, you'll be asked to attest to the following items. I did want to draw specific attention to the conflict of interest portion. So we still do ask that mentor coaches and clients maintain and rely on the ICF Code of Ethics and making sure that they're staying aligned with it. So if there are any known conflicts of interest, then you may have to proceed with next steps, whether it's making a new agreement or switching clients or referring them to a new mentor coach, depending on what that may be. So we definitely want to make sure that everyone still aligns. So that hasn't changed there. Now we're going to move into the main portion of the form. So this portion, there's not a whole lot of flexibility as to how you can fill it out, because this will be the most important part if a candidate or client is selected for audit. So this is what will be marked when it comes to that further development and moving forward. So we'll start with the ethical practice. As mentioned, it is important that the coach within their coaching session align with the ICF Code of Ethics. So you'll be asked to complete this section of the form. For clarification, alignment in the role of a coach, this is ensuring that they don't act in the role of any other modality. So this could be, for example, consulting, or maybe they're acting in mentor coaching during a coaching session, or maybe they might be leading the client in different directions, as opposed to allowing this to be a partnership. The important thing that I want to draw here is to make sure that you don't mistake this with something that might be a behavioral statement or a marker. So that is really important. So this one is directly related to what it says in the ICF Code of Ethics. And then when I get further down, I'll explain how this could potentially be mistaken, but a potential, as opposed to a potential marker or behavioral statement that talks about partnership and leading. So then if there is anything additional that you need to provide to them regarding ethics, you'll provide that in the additional comments box here. You press into it, and then you can type whatever you might need. So moving down into here, competency 2, there is nothing related to that that's built in this mentor coaching specific engagement. So it's just a review of this for your alignment. And then we'll move into competencies 3 through 8, which gets into the main evaluation portion of a mentor coaching session. So for ACC specifically, you are asked to use a rating scale. The difference between this and PCC is that PCC will be using observed and not observed. So there is a difference there. ACC and MCC use a BAR system, so behavioral anchored rating scale system. And so they use rating scales, and then PCC, once again, uses observed or not observed. So that'll be the only difference here for PCC. I also want to draw your attention to how this will be marked. So there will be a timestamp section. However, if you're observing a live session, we understand that you can't necessarily mark a timestamp during that observation. So if there are no timestamps that relate to your observed session, then you just have to specify that within the comments of this form. I'll get into this a little bit later in more detail, but within that feedback section, there is some flexibility there as well to provide quotes or instances as opposed to just specific timestamps. So moving into the evaluation portion that includes the rating scale. So as you go through and observe a live session or review a recording, you'll be asked to fill these out. Each of these statements is based on the specific credential level. So for ACC, it's going to be the ACC behavioral statements. For PCC, it'll be the PCC markers. And for MCC, it'll be the MCC behavioral statements. So these statements are different at every single level. So the one thing that I wanted to draw attention to that might be related to ethics is specifically right for this portion here. There is a statement that talks about an agreement, but that doesn't necessarily mean if they don't have the agreement that they're not in the role of a coach. It might just be a skill that they need to develop. So I just wanted to provide that example for clarity. So once you mark it, you'll click into the square if you want to mark it, and it'll automatically auto-populate. And then if you want to provide additional evidence, such as timestamps, quotes, or instances, you would provide that here. So you would put, 1247 as a potential quote or timestamp. I would say that this portion is helpful for those who are going through the live evaluation form. But for some reason, if you have a different way of collecting evidence, it doesn't have to be directly built into this form. This is just so that you can keep track of what to cover with your client. Once again, it can be timestamps, it can be quotes, it can be instances. It doesn't have to be in one format. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. This is all the same. You'll do that under each competency, selecting the right rating scale option. And then we get into the feedback. So as Carrie alluded to, there is some flexibility within leaving feedback. We know that you work with many clients that have served and have very different needs. And so there is some nuance here. So you can provide written feedback if that is beneficial to your client. Providing feedback to your client is required. However, the way in which you provide that feedback has many options. So an example would be the standard way. So the statement for feedback would be the behavioral statement listed above. So any of these statements, you would put that here, and then you would provide your comments here. It works the same way. You just type it in, whatever you would like to input and cover with your client. If your client does not respond very well to written feedback, then it also can be covered verbally. So if you cover it verbally with your client, then you would just input here, I reviewed my feedback verbally with my client. And then you would just put that statement or, something, it doesn't have to be that exact statement, but something along those lines about attesting to the fact that you did review that feedback with your client. It is a minimum of 2 to 3 areas of strength and 2 to 3 areas of development. However, it can be more, but it can't be less. So you'll do it for the strengths and you'll do it for the areas of development. The same rules and requirements apply. Moving into the end of this section here, you will be asked to print your name and your signature and the date that it was signed, and then you will save it as a PDF. This is a really important portion because we just want to make sure that the form doesn't get tampered with after you're completed with your session. So you save it as a PDF and you provide it directly to your client so they have a PDF copy of what you've reviewed with them. Once again, this won't be required for initial application submission, but it will be required if they are selected for audit. And then I did want to highlight that you don't have to print it out and sign it. You can do an electronic signature as well if that's what you would like, but you have an option for both. All righty. So I'm going to move into the competency review form now. It may go a little bit quicker because some of the portions are a little similar to the session observation form. So I'll zoom in the same amount just to make sure everyone can see it. Okay. So once again, we'll have the overview. I did want to draw one thing that comes up as a constant question. So what happens if people work with multiple mentor coaches? So if I'm a client and let's say I want to work with several mentor coaches. So I have my first session and then I decide that I want to do another mentor coaching session with a new mentor coach, or my mentor coach only has availability for one session. They will complete that full session observation form that I went through, and that session observation form will inform and the competency review form. So they have to complete both if you're only doing one session with that mentor coach. If you plan on doing multiple sessions with the same mentor coach, then they don't have to provide a competency review form every single time. It'll just be at the end of the engagement. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Similar to the session observation form, a pre-review reflection and a post-review reflection are also required. As mentioned, there's some flexibility to embed it within the session, or you can do it through email or outside of the formal session as well. Again, making sure that you complete it properly with the credential level, and that for this session specifically, they will be asked to put in the total amount of hours that you completed with the client, as well as when those sessions took place. So this is informed by those session observation forms. So these will only be the session observation forms that you conducted. If another mentor coach conducted a mentor coaching session using the session observation form, that won't be in yours. It'll be in their competency review form. So making sure that you keep those separate. The conflict of interest portion still applies here. Now to get into the main portion of the form. So we do have received a few questions about how the 67% is calculated. So I will get into that, but I did also want to make a note with that same caveat of working with multiple mentor coaches. So if I work with one mentor coach on one session, it is not expected that they meet all 67% within that one session. They may only do one of the 3 statements under each competency. However, they can use combined competency review forms to reach that total 67%. So that will make sense. As soon as I go through the form, I'll look probably a little bit more, but I wanted to make sure that that was clear. You'll cover the ethics portion. This one's a little bit more streamlined, just making sure that they've consistently demonstrated that they abide by the ICF Code of Ethics in their coaching sessions. And then we'll get into the competencies 3 through 8 evaluation. Once again, this is cumulative review. So this is based on every session observation that you've conducted with your client. So if it's 3, it's 3. If it's 17, it's 17. So whatever you want included in this, it has to be tied to a session observation form. So specifically for ACC, they only have to demonstrate this skill in at least one of those observed coaching sessions. So they don't have to demonstrate it in all 17 of the sessions or all 3 of the sessions. They just have to state that it's been demonstrated in one of those session observation forms. For ACC and MCC, it counts as demonstrated if they marked exceed standard or meet standard. For PCC, it counts as demonstrated if they did observed. Oh no, my computer's freezing. Okay, good. I was like a little nervous there. All right, so now moving into what each section of the form. So the 67%, we made it super easy for you. We didn't want you to have to get out your calculator and do all the math to see what 67% equals. We put the statements out right here. So it's different for each competency because each competency contains different amount of statements. This applies to PCC as well. So if they demonstrated 3 out of the 4 statements under competency 3, then they meet that 67% criteria. Once again, they only have to demonstrate it at least once. So if let's say they demonstrated 3.1 in session 1, and then they demonstrated 3.2 in session 4, then it's still, or they didn't demonstrate 3.3 at all, then they would be proficiency not demonstrated. So you would complete this all the way through, and as you can see, hooray, they did all 3. So then you would mark it, yes, proficiency has been demonstrated. I want to emphasize that this part is extremely important to be filled out correctly, because this is exactly what we're going to be looking for when somebody submits their application. If it's marked incorrectly, then we will have to go back to the client or the applicant, state that it hasn't been filled out properly, and then they will have to reach back out to you to get it filled out properly. So it, causes a little bit of additional work on your end as well as the client's end. So just making sure that this is filled out accordingly and that this orange box is filled out correctly as well. So this continues all throughout for each competency. It's the same at the PCC level. There is no wording change except for the statements themselves. All right, and then similar to the feedback for the section observation form, if you cover the feedback verbally, if you cover it in any other manner, just making sure that you specify how it was covered, and make sure that you're making it clear on what was covered. And same, it's 2 to 3 areas of strength, 2 to 3 areas of development. It can be more, but it can't be less. And then lastly, you're going to ask to attest to these components here. You'll sign it, save it as a PDF, provide it to your client, and once again, it could be electronic or written signature. So I know that was a lot, but hopefully seeing the form, seeing how it works and how you go through it was helpful and brought some more clarity.
Thank you so much, Khyla. And we're going to go back. We've got just a few more slides to go through. So I'm going to go back to the slide deck very quickly. We've got a few more things to run through, and then we've got a lot of really great questions that have been submitted through the chat. So we'll go through those questions in just a minute. But I want to talk about, before we do that, some of the implications for 2027. So, and this speaks to, I think, 1 or 2 questions that I saw in the chat about when does this really go into effect? Most of this will go into effect in the early part of 2027. All beginning January 1st, 2027. All mentor coaching, any new mentor coaching hours for ACC, PCC, or MCC, we want those to be completed with someone who holds the MCS. Again, the mentor coach specialization, I should say. That's because we want to ensure that our candidates for credentials who are engaging, who are investing in mentor coaching services are doing it with someone who has been well trained and equipped to provide high quality services. So beginning January 1, we want any new mentor coaching hours for those 3 levels, as well as for renewal. Someone uses mentor coaching for renewal to be completed with an MCS. And that adds that transparency and trust in the process. That's a huge benefit for mentor coaching clients, but there are also some really good benefits for mentor coaches as well. And what I mean by that is the training that has been developed, that is being accredited through either the advanced accreditation in mentor coaching and some shorter programs designed to support experienced mentor coaches through CCE programs. Those are all being developed in alignment with the mentor coaching competencies. That's standards for knowledge and competence in this specific area of practice. And so we know that that's going to be a high quality place to start providing high quality foundational education for mentor coaches. We're also going to offer mentor coaches who earn the MCS a digital badge to show each level for which they've been approved to provide mentor coaching. That allows mentor coaches to display their achievement and market themselves in the marketplace in a very easy way. We're also updating the mentor coach registry to demonstrate those mentor coach specializations, who holds them at each level as well. And it will be able to be searched by a variety of fields, including the level of mentor coach specialization that a client is looking for in a mentor coach, perhaps their language, where they're located, etc. So that registry, that updated registry, is actually being launched this week. So please stay tuned to our website, and you'll see that if you have already earned the MCS, you'll see that that's reflected on your profile. Beginning January 1, only mentor coaches who hold an MCS will be visible and featured on the mentor coach registry. Now, all of this also feeds into some major changes to how we measure skills, coaching skills, primarily for portfolio candidates at the ACC and PCC levels beginning April 1. And what those changes are is that beginning April 1, 2027, we're going to move away from performance evaluation as what we call a summative assessment. So kind of essentially an exam as part of the credentialing process for ACC and PCC portfolio candidates. This will also take place within accredited programs as well in the form of their final performance evaluations that currently exist at the level 1 and level 2 program. Instead of that final performance evaluation, we're actually going to be using the competency review forms to validate coaching skills. So it's a skills check provided by their mentor coach to validate their skills in the language, in the style, in the accessible way that mentor coaching client needs, adding a layer of increased fairness, validity, and accessibility to that skills check, that skills validation process compared to the current performance evaluation process. It also allows for a client to show their skills, demonstrate their skills over a period of time through a variety of recordings or live observed sessions. We know that even the very best coaches may not have the opportunity to demonstrate the breadth of their skills in a single coaching session. So this allows for a mentor coaching client to demonstrate the breadth of their coaching skills over the course of several coaching sessions, not through a single recording and transcript provided to the ICF. It also really allows for greater accessibility. So we know from a language perspective, from other accessibility needs, finding performance evaluation assessors who are able to adequately, reliably, and fairly assess those performance evaluation recordings can be really challenging, even given a very large pool of global ICF assessors. And so by providing this accessibility through the mentor coaching process, founded on really strong, robust training, we're allowing mentor coaching clients to be able to work with a mentor coach who is able to meet them where they are and to meet their unique needs, whether they be language needs or other accessibility needs. So all of this will go into effect April 1. So beginning April 1, we will no longer require ACC and PCC portfolio candidates to supply a recording or recordings and transcripts with their credential application. Instead, they will provide the competency review forms completed by their mentor coach, or if they work with multiple mentor coaches, their mentor coaches, right? And so we will review those forms, those completed forms on our end as part of the application process. If they are selected for audit, they will provide the session review forms or the session observation forms that feed into those competency review forms. We won't be looking at all of the feedback as part of that process. We'll just be looking to make sure that those skills were actually demonstrated across those several sessions, however many sessions are included. What this means for portfolio candidates is the application fee for portfolio applications will go down because we are no longer doing a performance evaluation, which requires a great deal of resources to support. So the application fees will go down for those portfolio candidates. The review time will also be decreased quite dramatically, we anticipate. So right now it can take up to 18 weeks to review a portfolio application. We anticipate that will be much more aligned with the accredited pathways in the future. So maybe not 4 to 6 weeks, but more like 6 to 8 weeks. So it could be quite a significant reduction in the time that the application is reviewed. All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to Khyla for some really important resources, and then we'll open it up to some really great questions that have been dropped in the chat. Khyla.
Thank you, Carrie. So throughout this launch and development, we've had various resources that we have created to help you all with your mentor coaching practice. This is most, but not all, so I will mention these and also point to a couple that we have newly developed. So first we have the Mentor Coaching Handbook. So this provides an overview of how to conduct your mentor coaching practice. So this is for everyone, but it's also for those who it might be their first time conducting a mentor coaching practice. While their education does cover this, it will be helpful to guide them through what sessions to include, what they might want to consider. It outlines the ICF mentor coaching competencies and then goes into some details about mentor coaching best practices. We also have the ACC, PCC, and MCC minimum skills requirements. So I do want to clarify that this was specifically developed for candidate purposes. So this provides that transparency for clients and candidates to understand what's going to be required of them when working towards an ICF credential, specifically with demonstrating skills in a live coaching session. So for those of you that have seen it, which I'm sure many of you have, there's 3 sections. And so within those sections, there's those key skills, and that's based on the ICF core competencies. And then there's the behaviors consistent with ICF coaching standards, and is the behavioral statements and the markers. So I just want to clarify that that's those statements that are built into the session observation and competency review form. And then at the end, it's I believe it's ICF coaching standards that are inconsistent. I don't think I have the wording right, but anyways, it's like it's inconsistent with the coaching standards. So that outlines contra evidence for those of you that might have heard that word before, or basically things that could happen within a session that might require further development, or that might be shown in a session that they kind of want to avoid doing on a regular basis. So this helps them understand what they're going to learn about, what they might need to know when they're performing in those live coaching sessions. This also can be referenced by the mentor coach as a tool when you're going over the mentor coaching engagement. Then we have the evaluation trainings, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with if you've been working to achieve your MCS. But if you're not familiar with it, we have 3. So we have the ACC bars training, the PCC marker training, and the MCC bars training. Each of these trainings were developed to teach you all how to evaluate live or recorded coaching sessions. So it goes through how to move through the rating scale for ACC and MCC. For PCC markers, it shows how to use evidence and contra evidence to mark observed or not observed. And it goes into various details regarding that. Embedded within these evaluation trainings, there's also a feedback portion and a bias awareness portion, and they have accompanying guides. So moving into the next resources here, we have the evaluation feedback guide. Written and verbal feedback are very important, and the delivery of those methods are very important. It can be the difference between encouraging someone and discouraging someone. So this provides best practices with how to leave that neutral evidence-based feedback. And then we have the bias awareness guide. It's a very high level guide about how to identify potential bias that you might have when reviewing recordings, and how to proceed once that bias has been noticed. So it's a very good guide that a lot of our members and volunteers have put together for your use of evaluation purposes. And lastly, we have the ACC, PCC, or MCC resource guides. So these are very, 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 very important. And I say this because these guides were built to inform your evaluations. So when you're doing the session observation forms, it's really important to refer back to these guides to inform how you mark it when you're reviewing the coaching session. So we have them built for each level so that you can ensure that you're following the same standardized guidelines as other mentor coaches in your practice. And then I'll post this in the chat as well, but we do have a mentor coaching hub. So I'll make sure to provide that with all the nuances between candidates, you receiving your MCS, and all the nuances that come with it. So I would like to close so that we can address as many questions as possible with a quote about mentor coaching. So developing others isn't about changing who they are. It's about moving them one step closer to who they want to become. So we're really thankful for everyone who is working as a mentor coach, aspires to become a mentor coach. because you're really helping people develop who they are and who they want to become. And for those of you that have already received mentor coaching, it can make a great impact on their future. So thank you for today, and we'll be happy to begin fielding questions. I tried to answer a few in the chat, but we'll try to get through as many as possible. But feel free to email support if you have any additional questions that we don't get to today.
Also happy to compile everything that's in the chat, and we can send those across to you in case we can work together on an FAQ, if that's helpful.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We've done that in the past, so happy to do that.
Wonderful. Would people like to come off mute to ask questions? Because there were so many in the chat, I don't know which to choose.
Can I ask a quick one that I didn't put in the chat? Previously, the requirement from the ICF was that the length of the coaching session, is that still a requirement, or is that we can make a decision ourselves as mentor coach in terms of the time? So there's no minimum for a coaching session for our observations for the individual mentor coaching.
Correct. Yes. Thank you, Helen. For performance evaluations, we do have minimum and maximum. For mentor coaching, we leave that to the mentor coach, the client, to you all to decide what's gonna work best for you. So, great question.
Thank you. I did have a question come up that I wanted to make sure I addressed. So one of them in the chat was, I noticed that the definition of conflict of interest changed. Earlier, ICF allowed the mentoring of a relative. Can we please clarify? Do you have any insight on that, Carrie?
I don't recall when mentor coaching a relative was allowed. We've had conflict of interest kind of guidelines as part of the code of ethics for quite some time, and that could present a conflict of interest if someone is related to someone, or if someone has supervisory responsibility over another, just like we would not recognize coaching that is delivered by a supervisor, to a direct report, or to a family member. Those do present some conflicts of interest, particularly in the scope of mentor coaching, where evaluation is taking place. But it is outlined specifically in this form as one of the areas one of the examples of a potential conflict of interest. So that's a very important element of this form, and it's an important element of the mentor coaching process, is to check for those potential conflicts of interest. What could prevent one from providing objective mentor coaching services?
Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
We can go to Sherry and then Marianne, and then I have one in the chat that'll be good to answer.
Hi. Yeah, I'm curious. Okay, so can the portfolio applicants begin using the mentor coach for their review, the core competency form, beginning January 1st? They don't have to wait until April?
Great question, Sherry. If they are working with a mentor coach today who holds the mentor coach specialization and has completed the training, they can start using those forms right now. Beginning in January, we're actually going to have a parallel track for portfolio candidates at the ACC and PCC levels. So if I'm applying for the PCC through the portfolio path, beginning January 1, and I've already started working with a specialized mentor coach, and that mentor coach has completed these forms for me. Beginning January 1, I'll be able to apply through that new mentor coaching pathway and provide those forms in lieu of a recording. Now, I will have the option between January 1 and March 31st. I could go either way. Beginning April 1, it will be important for a portfolio candidate to have those completed forms to submit with their portfolio application.
Okay. And do you foresee the 18-week time frame for the portfolio path, or for any, well, even a leveled path, I guess? I guess it wouldn't pertain to level path, but for the MCC to be reduced as well, since the ICF won't be evaluating so many applicants' recordings?
We do anticipate for the review time to decrease significantly for ACC and PCC portfolio candidates with this new process, with the mentor coach process. We anticipate we're looking at somewhere around 6 weeks is what we're anticipating for the review time for those. Now, the MCC will maintain the performance evaluation for now, and so we don't anticipate a major dramatic decrease in the review time for MCCs at this time, but certainly for the ACC and PCC portfolio candidates.
Okay. And one last question. And on the renewals, so ACC needs to have mentor coaching for renewal, but PCC and MCC do not. And that is staying the same?
Correct. Correct.
Thank you very much.
Great questions.
Marianne?
Yeah, I had a kind of follow-up question about the conflict of interest. If there is a trainer who has been a trainer in a accredited program in the kind of training hours, so how is that person? Is that the conflict of interest if that person is also doing the mentor coaching and the evaluation form? I think it's a little bit like
Yeah, that's a great question. Our colleague, Leslie Cavan, is on the call. I don't see her on the screen, but I know she's here. I'll allow Leslie to kind of speak to that question since it's related to accredited programs. Leslie? Leslie is still here?
Hey, I'm sorry, I had to run away for a second, so I didn't hear the question, but I'm here now. So if you want to re-ask it.
Okay. The question was that if a coach is training in a coaching accredited training and also is approaching to do the mentor coaching and the evaluation, is that a conflict of interest? Because the coach, the mentor coach who has a mentor coaching specialization, but knows the person and has seen the person in many other situations during the training hours. Is that
I think we would kind of, use performance evaluations as an example of that. A lot of our current providers internally do the performance evaluation, and it's the same faculty members. So we don't see that as any different or a conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I'm gonna just say something real quick, and then Chris, I'll get to your question. I know we're almost at time, but I know this is a common misconception. So for what MCSs can complete what forms, and I just want to clarify that. So for ACC candidates, they can receive mentor coaching to the ACC or PCC level. If they receive mentor coaching to the ACC level, their mentor coach has to hold an MCS at the ACC level. If they receive mentor coaching to the PCC level, then their mentor coach has to hold an MCS for the PCC level. And then same again, if they have the MCS at the ACC level, they have to do it with the ACC session observation and competency review form. And if it's at the PCC level, it has to be with the PCC session observation and competency review form. So just want to provide that clarity there.
Khyla, can I add to that as well? Unless someone's done an AAMC that includes the ACC, PC, and MCC training.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great clarification. My question was in regards to the feedback section on the forms. Are we supposed to enter specific feedback then on up to 3 areas of strength and 3 areas of growth then across the form? And what if that feedback is given verbally? Does that still need to be included in the form as well?
Great question, Carissa. And so what we ask for in that form is up to 2 to 3 areas of feedback across the competency. So you pick 2 to 3 areas or 2 to 3 competency areas where the client has demonstrated their strengths, 2 to 3 areas where the client may need some additional development, even if they demonstrated proficient skills, right? These are opportunities for development. That feedback can be submitted with the form in a written format, submitted to the client in a written format, and that's perfectly fine. You can document that directly in the provided space on the form. If you want to provide a verbal kind of debrief with your client, if you want to provide an art piece that demonstrates the feedback that you want to offer, or if you want to provide a video kind of clip that provides that feedback, that's perfectly fine. Just put that in the form as provided your feedback in, video format, or in a face-to-face debrief, and you don't have to worry about submitting all of the written feedback there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's me?
Yes, budget.
Okay. Hello. So my question is about the translation, because how we do this translation, because if you do it with the Google Translator, you have to change some things because it's not covered. You can't understand it really.
Yeah. Thank you, Virginia. It's great to see you, by the way. It's been a while, but it's really nice to see you again. Sure. If you do a browser-based translation, and some of the browser-based translations are better than others, but if you do a browser-based translation, and if you need to edit that so that it makes sense to your client, go ahead and edit that. What we want, and the reason that we provided these forms in Word format, is to make the translation process a lot easier so that we can make these forms accessible to your clients. That's really what's at the heart of the format. We want to make this as easy as possible. Of course, if you're using Google Translate and it's doing a mediocre job, go ahead and wordsmith that in Spanish or whatever language you're using so that it's meaningful to the client. That's what's most important. And they can submit that PDF of the form directly to us in that language. Our team will look at what are what skills have been demonstrated, and that there's some level of input in the feedback, and that's perfectly fine on our end. Again, the most important thing is making it meaningful and accessible to your clients.
And the other question is about we have the minimal skills requirements and the ACC bars. So it means to no show the bars to the clients, but we have to do the mentor with the bars or with the PCC markers. So how?
So it's a good question, and I think this is what Khyla was trying to get to earlier. The ACC bars, or the PCC markers, or the MCC bars, are actually integrated within the minimum skills requirements. So they are there, but the minimum skills requirements provides more narrative around the specific skills within each competency area. So you've got an introductory paragraph that talks about what the competency is for. You've got the behavioral statements that are listed under behaviors consistent with ICF standards. And then you have some areas that could be red flags or behaviors that would be contrary to the expectations under behaviors inconsistent with ICF standards within each competency area on the minimum skills requirements. It's just a more narrative document for the client so that there's more context for them to understand what is it that they need to be able to do within this particular competency and why. The ACC bars, the PCC markers are just a little bit more bulletized form of that. It's a little bit more straightforward for the mentor coach, essentially.
My question directly is, we of course need to show the markers or the bars to the client. Yeah. That's
yes,
of course.
Okay. And that's totally fine. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Claire, are you okay with us continuing to answer questions? I know I have some time, but
so
Carrie,
I'm okay till about 20 past at the max. If that's okay with you, or I can make you host, whichever.
Yeah, no, that's works.
Get on.
That's great.
Henrietta.
Hi. My question really is about for those of us who are neurodiverse. I mean, I look at this process, and it's agony for my brain, to be honest. It is so painful looking at this. There's this, and you've got this, and you've got a difference between this and this and this. it's absolute torture for a neurodiverse brain. I have ADHD. I'm pretty competent. I'm going for my MCC at the moment. And I'm already hearing about other coaches with ADHD, mentors. I've been mentoring for 10 years and I love it. And I've had, great success. I've never had someone I've mentored fail. I am seriously thinking that I'm going to have to give up because I'm not sure that the amount of time it's going to require for me to try and fit my brain into this, because I don't know if you know how ADHD brains work, but they see one piece of information and they go, oh, that's interesting. And then they see another piece of information and they go, oh, I'll go over there and I'll go over there and I'll go over there and I'll go over there. And we hold all these multiple things going on together. Also, a lot of us who are neurodiverse have problems with memory, or a number of us, I won't say all, many, some of us have problems with memory. So we might live the competencies, but we can't remember them. So we've got to have the competencies here, this here, that here, that here. And just as you were talking through all of this, my stomach was knotted with horror. The kind of, I just cannot explain to you how horrible it is to look at something like this and how much anxiety and stress this causes me. I mean, I'm going for, to be accredited for this, but once I've got my accreditation, I may have to give up because I just do not really see how any of us who particularly have ADHD can possibly cope with such an overwhelm of information. And I'm really wondering what thought was given to neurodiverse brains and what extra help. I mean, it would be great if there are videos, but even so, it's so overwhelming. And overwhelm is the thing that gets many people with ADHD, which stops them doing things.
Henrietta, thank you so much for sharing that perspective. And I'll echo what Claire has said in the chat there. The field needs you and your leadership as a mentor coach. And so thank you for your courage to share that on this call and for that feedback. I will say that we were conscientious about creating something that was as accessible as possible. In fact, when we were developing the forms, we actually worked with an accessibility consultant who does accessibility reviews for higher education. And so he helped us in designing the forms, not just for neurodiversity in mind, but for all sorts of accessibility needs. And yet we know that it's not perfect. And so we need courageous mentor coaches like you to provide that feedback and to help us to continue to form and refine and improve the process and our forms so that they are as accessible as possible to mentor coaches and to mentor coaching clients. So we want that to be the case. And that is also a commitment of ours too, is we worked really hard with a lot of mentor coaches to help design these forms and alongside our accessibility consultant. And yet we know that there are going to be opportunities and a need to continue to refine them over time. So please help us shape and form the forms and the process in the future. That's really important to us. And we can't do that on our own without that feedback and perspectives that you and others are willing to share. So thank you.
Thank you.
Me?
Well, yeah.
Hello, Manuela.
Hi, Carrie. Nice to meet you again.
Yes, it's nice to see you.
I have a question similar to what now we listened, but not specifically about diversity or ADHD, but about the form, because as I read, we can't change the form and I'm using it. I'm already using it, but what my experience now is that is not very functional, that form, because uses a sequential mode, and it's very difficult sometimes to go to find something that before you already have checked, or something you put there. So do you mean that we can't change the content of the form, but we can organize it in another way, or we can propose something perhaps more efficient and effective in the same time? Is it possible, this?
Yeah, thank you, Emanuela. And what we mean by we don't want the content of the form to be changed is really that primary section of the competency review form that covers the competency areas. Those are elements where it's going to be really important for our team to be able to recognize and be able to review with consistency for candidates who submit those with their application. So we want that kind of that primary section of the form to remain the same. Now, if formatting, I don't know what you have in mind specifically, but if you want to add content before or after, or you want to reformat it somehow that doesn't change that structure so that it will still be recognizable for our team as they're reviewing it, what we're trying to avoid is our team not being familiar with a completely reconfigured form and then not providing a fair review of that form when it comes before them as part of a credential application. We just want to provide a fair process for all credential applicants to be reviewed. So that's kind of where we are with that. I know there are some groups that have reformatted the form in electronic format to make it a little easier to navigate. That's totally fine as long as it looks fairly consistent for our team to be able to review at the end.
Okay, what I mean, yes, what I mean, and if you agree, I can send also some examples, because several coaching schools are education providers already use some form that with the same kind of information could give the possibility to access that information easier. So it also, just because it's overwhelming in this way, but it's also visualization more hard in this way. Okay. So if you agree, I can send you also some example if I can use that in that way, the same
That'd
content.
Be great.
Okay,
absolutely,
thanks.
Absolutely. Please do. Thank you. Now, see, Sue has her hand up as well. Sue.
Hello, glad to be here. I think you may have just answered my question, Carrie, but I want to be sure about this. You say that one of the main purposes of this whole effort is consistency. And I'm hearing now that it's really in the middle section where we're looking at all the competencies and, did they pass or not pass, et cetera, et cetera. But when you talk about the fact that we could give feedback on the areas of strength and the areas for development in any way we like, including written, verbal, video clips. I might write a poem for a client since I'm a poet, I don't know. But it sounds like that part of it, and I appreciate the ability to be creative in doing the mentor coaching, can be different than the middle section of the form. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Okay. That's what I wanted to ask before you answered it. So thanks for the reassurance.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you all for the really great questions. Oh, we've got a few more. Let's go to Sterna and then to Sherry, and then I think we'll probably need to close. Claire, is that correct? Yeah, about that point. Okay. Thank you. Sterna.
Hi, thank you. So when it's a verbal conversation, you don't have to record what was spoken about. Just say,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
The second thing is, can you just sum up the simple steps to become a mentor, coach, supervisor? Just the A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it sounds super complicated and there's so much to do. Just could you lay it out very simply so we can close the session and know exactly what we need to do and get on with the show?
Absolutely. So we want mentor coaches to receive robust training. So we want mentor coaches to have 41 hours or more training in mentor coaching practice aligned with the mentor coaching competencies.
And where do they get that?
Mentor coaches can get that training through a number of ICF accredited providers. It can also be through non-accredited training, Sterna, so it doesn't have to be through an ICF accredited provider. It just needs to map to the mentor coaching competencies. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, is it going to be at a cost?
Yes.
Well, yes. I mean, I think most providers it's ICF doesn't deliver this training directly, the general mentor coaching education. So I would assume, yes, that most providers have a cost for their course to be able to deliver that. At each level of mentor coaching that you want to provide, we want you to complete evaluation training. So that needs to be a part of your education as well. That is education that ICF provides directly through the ACC bars training, the PCC markers training, the MCC bars training that's available on our learning portal. So every level that you want to provide, we want you to have that evaluation training as well. Now, some other accredited providers will also integrate that training into their accredited mentor coaching courses too. So you can get it either place. But those are really the requirements to earn the mentor coaching specialization is getting robust, at least 41 hours of mentor coaching education, including evaluation training at each level that you want to provide.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. All right. And I think I saw Sherry, you had your hand up, but maybe it's already been answered.
It hasn't. I just typed it in the chat so that Claire could get on her way. So I'll just hold.
We will collect all of these great questions that you've offered in the chat. And I want to say thank you for the great questions because it helps us be able to communicate with greater clarity to others when you all ask these questions. So it's really a service to us that you're asking some really spot on questions. We'll take a look at those. We'll provide written responses and we will send that back to Claire for distribution to all of you. I really appreciate everyone's time, your thoughtfulness, your interest, and your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for coming. Carrie,
I just want
Khyla.
to thank you, Claire, and definitely thank you, Carrie and Khyla. This is wonderful. Literally so much of information. I think somebody asked about putting the FAQ. I've almost gone through all the questions. Wonderful questions if you can pull them through into an FAQ. And definitely you might be having these sessions elsewhere. That FAQ is going to be greatly helpful.
Yeah.
Appreciate this. Thank you very much.
Suresh put together absolutely all of our feelings in a simple, nice way. Suresh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you. Thank you.
Khyla, Carrie, amazing. So thorough, so many people attending. Clearly something the community needed. And look forward to seeing everyone in the next community cafe.
Special thanks to Dr. Claire for organizing this.
Pleasure. It's helped me as well. So thank you. See you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you.